Welcome, everybody. You are live.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Ellen Nash, the chair of the San Diego chapter of BAPAC, which stands for the Black American Political Association of California. We welcome all of you who are on Zoom. We welcome all of you who are on Facebook Live and also on YouTube. That's for those that can't attend today, but they can always go back and watch us later on today or in the afternoon or the evening, or even even in the next couple of months. It's an archive session. We are delighted that you all have decided to take a couple of hours out of your Saturday morning to be with us. We're going to get right into our program. We have some great leaders. I call them the first of the first here with us today, and we want to give them as much time as possible to share their vision and also to share information about these newly created roles within the San Diego County and the City of San Diego. But before we get started with these two great leaders, people are still coming in, so I'm still admitting people. But I really want to, first of all, open up with prayer with our own Pastor Don Conley. Thank you, Pastor Conley, for being with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for the privilege today to join together, even on the internet and by phone. We thank you for this day because it is a day that you have made. We pray now that your Spirit would guide through this particular meeting, that all the things that have been accomplished might be remembered because we know that you have allowed us to make it this far. Bless this time, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. We would like to remind everyone to turn their mics off. We will have a question and answer period toward the end, but we don't want interruptions to deter the information that will be provided today. I also want to put an emphasis this morning or afternoon on memberships. If you would like to join the San Diego chapter of BAPAC, we would welcome your membership. Memberships are only $25 for regular members and $20 for our students. And if you call me on the phone, students, I always am pretty open to give you even a deeper discount. And also we have our corporate and organizational sponsorships. The money we collect from membership allows us to provide and do things around programming and support programs like this, and also contribute to other opportunities within our community. So that funding is certainly appreciated. I also wanted to talk about 2022. BAPAC, we intend to proceed back into in-person meetings and our event schedule next year. Over the course of the last 2 years, because of COVID, we've been online and all of our events have been put on hold. But if things continue on a upward trajectory with regard to both COVID, we anticipate returning to our regularly scheduled events. And you know how BAPAC does it. We like to party, we like to celebrate each other, and also we like to raise money as well. So we will be returning to all of our regularly scheduled events, given if COVID continues upward. We're not having our Christmas party this year. We haven't had one for actually 2 years. But because of COVID and the advice of some of our doctors who are members of BAPAC, we've decided as a board that we just don't want to risk it. We would not want anyone to fall ill to COVID on our watch. But we will convene all of our events. We're planning a conference. We're going to celebrate the life of our own great late state president, Dr. Billy Blair, next year. So look forward to a lot of work, but also a lot of fun. But during the last 2 years, and particularly this year, we have put an emphasis on collaboration. We were not going to die, but we were die in terms of not being relevant in the community. So our emphasis has been on collaborations. And as a result of the collaborations, I would like to really put an emphasis and celebrate the Black Youth Initiative that we collaborated with a group of Black leaders here in San Diego, where we raised several $1,000s from the county, San Diego Workforce Partnership, and other individuals to place 50 Black youth across San Diego for the summer for 6 weeks. And those young people were placed in the city offices, the city council offices, the county. Some went to work for USD, the district attorney's office, the Jacobs office, ICW, a big insurance company that's owned by Brady himself, Mission Strategies, and we thank MTS for providing bus passes. We in 2 months we pulled together this infrastructure that included mentorships by Kahim from Global Urban Nomads, and everything else that went into promoting and creating a youth employment program that provided 50 young people experience working at different companies. Someone that needs to be on mute, please be on mute. Mute your phones. Mute, mute. So I wanted to give a shout out to those 50 young people that their parents put us in their care. And we were able to deliver. And some of the kids, we did a celebration for them last Saturday. Their lives are changed forever. If you put young people in the right place at the right
What'd you say?
time, you can change the trajectory of their lives where they see themselves becoming professionals and going into workplaces where they that will also result into them becoming employees as well as employers of companies. So we're very proud of that of that program particularly that we were
50% off.
able
See
to
when
make it
the
happen
see what
in about 2
is it exclusive for you because you got
we
your
thank all of our
see what it
so we
is.
thank all
Oh,
our employers. Most of all, we thank the young people. Some even
say
bus
50.
all the way from Lincoln High School to Poway for
Well,
6
that might be
weeks
that might allow me to go to
get that
Tennessee.
experience they had working
But I have
for
to
that particular for the insurance company, and we really do appreciate their patience and doing that work. I also wanted to talk. I wanted to ask Dr. Brenda Miller. Can you just give us a couple of minutes talk about COVID and Thanksgiving and our holiday COVID compliance procedures? Thank you.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Ella.
to
Most
be in a
importantly, what's coming up, we want to stay safe for the holidays. We all want to be well. COVID is still
25th,
well and
December
active.
25th.
We just lost a nurse. She worked on Saturday and
Yeah, it's
exposed
just
to
one way.
COVID and expired a week
Because I
later.
assume you can
So
only get it
COVID is still
unless you if
well
you
and
buy
alive.
it at the same time. Will
So
they
we
give you
want to
50% off
celebrate in
that?
the best way that's possible
Let's
to
let's
prepare
see.
the COVID-19. And if you want to be with your family indoor and without masks, please get vaccinated. And it's time to get the boosters, so do get the boosters. And if there's children 5 years and older,
Right, okay.
please get vaccinated. Because most importantly, you want to protect those not yet eligible to be vaccinated, but get yourself vaccinated and other
That's a
eligible
deal.
people want to be vaccinated to protect each other. Most importantly, you want to keep your gatherings small. If everyone at an indoor gathering is fully vaccinated, masks are not are optional.
Say that again.
But if your guests are unvaccinated and you don't know the status, plan to gather
Is that
gatherings that
Aaron?
are
Yeah,
small,
Aaron.
they're short, and they're outdoors. Continue to wear your mask over your nose and your mouth. Practice social distancing. When you might be
So I
around
need to
an
buy the club though.
unvaccinated
That's a cost.
person in
I thought I joined the club.
indoors. And please continue to protect the older individuals and people with medical conditions. Make sure that the inside is well ventilated. If you're inside, open doors or windows. If you have touches, high quality air filters, use windows, taking extra precautions is a understatement. It's still there, it's
Sure.
still alive, and it can still affect us. So if you haven't been tested, get
Okay, multiple
tested fully
tickets.
free. If you're feeling sick, please stay home. Just don't expose others. And most of all, learn to cook when you're sick and you want to protect others. And just ask that
Okay.
someone to schedule in the room that you're in, to come in so you can
And then all the tickets will be jumping out. So I'd get.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Miller.
So really, you're okay.
We have two redistricting leaders on, and I'd be remiss without having us address the redistricting issue since it definitely
So let's see
impacts
what
the
that
Black
costs us.
community.
What's
I
3
have
tickets
we
for that
have
day?
on today Aaron with Wilson Reeves and John Tron. These two leaders have been doing an exceptional job in keeping us focused on the redistricting. And I would like, Aaron is going to speak to us about the city and state redistricting, and John is going to speak to us about the county. And I would like to give them a few minutes to update us
Oh wait, I'm sorry.
the
Too many
activities
things
that are
going
still
on.
going on and how we can all
Hold
get
that thought.
involved. Thank you, great leaders. Aaron?
Good morning, everyone. Erin Wilson Nieves here. I work with Alliance San Diego. I have been the redistricting lead for my organization, and we have been working on statewide as well as county, but Jean Lee has been taking a wonderful lead on that, and the city of San Diego. On a statewide level, the commission, the independent commission created or tasked with drafting maps, has released their draft maps on the Assembly, State Senate, and congressional level. These maps are very conflicting with what folks in our community have asked for. It splits very important communities like El Cajon, Spring Valley, La Mesa, Lemon Grove, and it does split parts of Southeast.
You said something like 505.
And so as we have been doing this process with statewide alliances and other organizations in San Diego, we have put an emphasis on the Black community as well as emerging Black communities, where folks are
582
moving
is great,
to
but you know
within our
what?
county.
Yeah.
We want those communities
It's
to be
400 right
recognized
now,
and to be kept
but that's
whole,
not on Christmas
in
Day.
districts on
So
all
5.
levels. We are still advocating,
582
and
on
if
Christmas
you
Day
all
is great.
like
I
talking
think
points
what
or
will probably get
presentation
me is
about the maps that we are advocating
my
for,
flight back because I'll
there's
be
still
trying to come back on the
opportunity for that,
31st.
as they are doing public comment today on the 22nd and on the 23rd. And this is all in preparation for them to turn in their final map on December 23rd. So there's still a lot of opportunity for advocacy. And I'm happy to have a more in detailed conversation with anyone who would like that. I'll put my
Because if
email
there's
in
a
the
shot
chat.
at that,
And then I'll
and then
skip down
I guess
to the San Diego city level. We have been engaging on that level as
which is
well,
cool.
with other great organizations here in San Diego. Right now, the commission has, the San Diego City Commission has released or voted
No,
on
because I know
accepting
I'm
a
not
preliminary
gonna.
map for the city of San
I'm
Diego.
gonna keep it simple as possible.
The map
It's
is
flying from
not
San Diego.
very representative of what our community
Yeah,
looks
but
like. Unfortunately, even though the
where's
maps
Santa
that were
Ana?
created by our coalition with over 40 organizations in San Diego, and even though we did an amazing amount of turnout, which I would say our map got the most support,
What that
commission
is
still
not
weren't impressed. And so we are still
what is that?
doing
10, right?
advocacy on that level. And just as I said for the state, I'm happy to have a separate, more detailed conversation with anyone who would like it. But their maps are going to be turned in on December 15th. So again, we still have opportunity to go out and talk about the changes that we want to see. I know I don't have a lot of time, so again, any other detailed conversation anyone wants to have, I will put my email in the chat and we can talk about what you can do and how you can use your voice. I'll pass it off to Jean.
Thank you, Erin. And yes, a big shout out to everyone and that have been doing the work on the redistricting of the city and the state level. The city is really amazing effort to see how all of the community leaders just came together and create a map that has over 40 organizations for it. It's super amazing, very inspiring. It made me feel like they did have a community coming, just what a community looked like. I know we can't a lot of that, but it's not very often we get to see it. So I'm here to speak about the county redistricting. So my name is Sean from County Is. I'm an organizer with CPI. Since March, we have been convening a lot of people across the county, all over the entire county. Basically, came up with a version of a map of our own
We were very strategically mobilizing only our people to go into the commission to share on the narrative that we can agree on. And for the District 4, we specifically advocated for it to move to the Nathan Fletcher to ship away from the coast and
Okay.
move it a little bit land to craft on the Black and Muslim and refugee immigrant population in La Mesa and El Cajon, Rancho San Diego, Spring Valley, as well as coming down and picked up Paradise Bay Terrace, Valencia Park, basically all of that. So essentially, it picked up the Black community from District away from District 2 and District 1 because without our Black leaders basically felt that as long as the Black population stay in District 2, District 1, they will not have a good reputation. So by shifting them into District 4, they will we basically were able to increase the Black population in District 4 from 8 to 11. So where we are today, our advocacy actually have been very successful in a way that the commissioner have been hearing a lot about narrative over and
What in the
over that
world?
the draft map, when they release them, there always one version that was really close to ours.
People,
So the battle is still on. In fact,
shit,
yes, Black Knight was one of the pop-up surprise.
people like putting their pronouns.
So
It's
on
interesting.
December 9th,
But they're putting like the
county
normal
commission
pronouns.
will be voting for a map. We still have one more chance to come in and communicate with the
Because, you know,
commissioner,
now
our
people
perspective,
think they are
and advocate for our community. That meeting is going to be on December 2nd. It's going to be a hybrid, and it's going to be in Linda Vista at the San Diego County Office of Education. At this point, we are advocating for members to come in person and help us to hold signs together and standing in solidarity together so to let the commissioner see how this version of the map that we all been pushing for months have a strong community support across the county. So if any of you folks that can join us, I would really appreciate it. Again, I will also drop my information in the chat as well. And yes, you will get talking points signed will be provided, and yes, we will feed you burrito as well. We don't want our people to get hungry in the meeting. But I also want to mention this as well is that Cara de Mayo has starting to mobilizing the Peace County people in. So I really, at the bottom of my heart, begging you guys to, help in any way that you can. If you can show up, that would be super appreciated because the work that I do here is completely anti-black. It's black community always on the front for me. Knowing that what we're trying to do here will bring a better reputation for the black community is so important. And it's been the battle we've been fighting for this piece been going on since March. So anything that you can support, I would really appreciate it. So I'm gonna drop my information into the chat as well, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron and John, first of all, for your leadership. But this is important for this is our last opportunity in regard to the city, the state, and the county level to have your voices heard. As you can see, you heard today from these leaders, is there are challenges being made. The challenges are the status quo that don't want to see changes made, that don't want to see people of color, particularly African Americans in this case, have a voice of voting power block is what they're saying. I'm just going to translate it into layman's terms. That's what this is all about. So your voice needs to be heard. Jot those dates down. Reach out to John and Aaron if you need more information. But a lot is at stake here in terms of our voting power, as well as resource allocation, as well as just the system providing us the respect that we are overdue. And it only happens 10 years. So this is the last time. And December is the last, and then we'll have to wait for another 10 years. And I don't think Black folks, we can wait that long. So thank you, John, and thank you, Aaron. They're on other calls as we speak now, fighting on our behalf. They just jumped on our call to share this information, and then they're jumping on other calls that are going to last probably all day long in regards to the fight and battle for redistricting. Thank you all for being here. Let's just give them a thank you. Take care. Love you guys. We have one more announcement or discussion point that is all near and dear to our hearts.
Cane sugar?
And that is the, I don't even like to call it, but it's the Rittenhouse verdict. I thought it'd be very important that there are some comments made on it today. So I've asked Jeremy Glass Blake is here, and I also think I saw Attorney Dante Wyatt. Dante? Yeah. Okay. Dante, can you just share some comments or your thoughts? And then, Amy, if you can share your comments and thoughts. Thank you.
Can I sit there?
Thank you. Good job.
I apologize.
Okay.
Good job, girl.
Want me to speak?
So understanding.
Okay. I had text you, but I guess
So
you get my
understanding. You're so smart.
Jeremy?
You're so smart.
Yes, thank you.
You're so smart.
Thank you for holding space for this quick discussion. I was asked by the media to say a few things yesterday in regards to the verdict, and I think for me, I was not shocked watching the whole thing through and how racist our justice system is in many places.
The Rittenhouse,
here.
the one,
I was not
the white
shocked
kid that
by the verdict.
went to the protest and wanted.
But I think one thing that was
not guilty.
that stood out to
Self-defense.
me was really recognizing that it was white men that were killed.
Yes, ma'am.
And white men's lives are the most valuable lives to America as we know it. And my comment was, if white men's lives aren't safe, then nobody's life is safe. If their lives can be devalued because they stand on the side of justice and righteousness and equity and not white supremacy.
Yeah, I'm catching them as they come. Yes, ma'am.
We Black people actually are in is so profound.
There you go. Okay, I got you.
And beyond that, when we have the conversation, and I know we have the Office of Race and Equity and Racial Justice here from the city and county that will kind of be talking. But I think it's important to say we will continue to see street justice until our justice system provides us real justice. And many things came out of George Floyd. Many things came out of many of the shootings of unarmed Black people who were seen walking through communities, and white people seen them as a threat and killed them and took their lives, unarmed. And this white boy could be driven hours to a protest, walk with a gun, and shoot down people fighting for the lives of those who are going to come after the George Floyd and the Breonna Taylors and those who have been innocently killed. And I say that we got the two offices created out of those issues. And what I'm seeing across the city and the county is that people are building off of our pain, but not actually following through with the issues pertaining to police brutality, the issues pertaining to the actual violence against Black people. They are using it as an opportunity for photo ops and to say they created something, really putting a Band-Aid on a disease, but not really dealing with the roots and the fruits of these issues. When we talk about gun violence, right, and we talk about what is happening in our community, this opens up a dialogue. I'm over here fighting for more gun protection laws, but be implemented on an equitable way so that they don't further harm Black people. But then when we see a openly, guilty white young man be able to do what he did with a gun, then we have to have the conversation on, how do we as Black people actually protect ourselves, and have these further conversations. So I think there's so much, and Miss Ellen, I can talk all day about this. There's so many different directions we need to go, but I think my cry in regards to this is us, since there's so many Black people on the call, we have to come together and hold our elected officials accountable to say, you will not keep creating things in our name. And every other community, the LGBT community, every other community benefiting except for us. And we're still dealing with the same things. And we as Black people have to be the ones to speak up and say this and stop taking crumbs.
There you go.
Thank you, Aramis Glass-Blake, for those words. And BAPAC will continue this conversation. We will definitely designate one of our membership meetings next year, town hall, whatever, to this topic. And let's just keep our prayers and hearts out to the victims and of the families of those victims. It's very, very hurtful. We have one more, and then we're going to turn it over to our leaders. Dr. Suzanne Forbes, could you just talk a little bit about our mental health piece and ensuring that we're taking care of ourselves, particularly in the challenging times that we're living in this country? Thank you, Dr. Forbes.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much, Mama Ellen Nash, for getting us all back together post-COVID and all that you have done throughout this whole time. We have to, as a people, protect ourselves, protect our hearts, and protect our minds from all of what I call vicarious visual trauma. We seem to be always the entertainment with our trauma. We have the Ahmaud Arbery trial being, streamed as if it's a movie. The same with George Floyd and many other incidents. That impacts us. A lot of other cultures, they might look at it and it might be difficult to watch. They don't internalize all of that the way that we do. So we have to protect ourselves, and we have to be mindful of seeing our image and our issues and our transgenerational traumas and our current traumas being put on display. But the reality is we have feelings. We experience the microaggressions. It is internalized into our bodies. It's manifested in higher blood pressures and anxiety and depression and various forms of impact.
And what are you going to do?
So we have a right to
It's so funny because really
shield
she
ourselves
just goes
from
to be
that,
friends.
take
You know what I'm saying?
from it, try to
I don't know if she's
try to
ever.
work on our children, not internalizing all that is happening. It just seems like Black people, we're just constantly in the forefront of every little thing. Critical race theory, boy, oh boy, Black people are out front on that. Black Lives Matter, police matters, visual images of people being harmed brutally on the screen, and we have a right not to internalize it. Doesn't mean that we don't.
This is pretty straight.
Do
you think it's the sauces that added flavor to it, or what?
Doesn't mean any of that, but we have a right to not be blasted with constant images, constant talk, constant dialogue about our.
And what you season it with?
We have a right to regroup and we have a right to control these narratives. Right now, everybody else is controlling our narratives. And so our mental health is important. And I know that we're going to have a robust, wonderful presentation, shortly. But one thing we deserve to have and to organize, fight for, and lead culturally competent services, which is completely absent in this
They
community. I
think I
say it
was.
all the time.
I think they can
Like
hear me now. It wasn't
culturally
me.
competent services for our
The lady, she called me.
culturally
She said somebody's on their
specific
cell phone. They thought
needs
it was me.
to heal not
Like, no,
only
I've been muted the
from
whole time.
racial trauma, racial issues, all of these imagery, but also, the economic situation that many, not all of us are in. So, and we also have a lot of homeless
Yeah.
African
Well, while the other
Americans,
person was talking.
elder, homeless, ill African Americans on the street and with their children and also elders, and it's devastating. So, so I just wanted to just share that with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Forbes. Abina, you wanted to make a comment, and then we're going to go on to our next presentations.
Yes, I did want to make a comment. I wanted to come behind Erin Meek and our redistricting people as she was speaking, and I just wanted to just state this to everyone that I was reminded over the weekend how much the ballot is so much greater than the bullet.
It could be on
And the
video,
ballot
but
is very
everybody's got
important. That's why the fight in redistricting is so strong right now. And I think that communities need to continue to fight and strengthen it, because if the ballot wasn't so powerful, there would not be so many efforts to take that away from us. We cannot give that away.
BAPAC,
We have to stay
Black,
strong, be counted,
something political,
and make a difference. So continue the redistricting fight so that we can battle some of those
Black
bullets that are
organization
hitting our community.
That wants to make an impact in the political realm, or like keeping Black people abreast in the political, almost like not lobbyists, but because they had no lobbying power, but more of like anybody that's running for office, things of that nature. We want to be abreast to it, so therefore we can get the information down here.
Hi, Ellen. Hi.
They kind of represent
I wanted you to just share your announcement with us.
So they got chapters all over. This is the San Diego chapter.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And so, of course, this is, they always would meet in real life.
I'm Shirley Harai, Manager of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I'm humbled by following such powerful
they meet on a topic.
speakers.
Of course, for the last year and a half, it's been Zoom.
Thank you for your comments and sharing that. It was very
earlier, I was just making the flyer for them.
Thank you, Ellen. I did want to attend.
And they would meet out. All I do is make the flyer, get it out.
Because we have so many opportunities going on in terms of employment. I wanted to make sure to reach out to your group and ask for assistance in getting the word out about all of our vacancies at the Port of San Diego. We are hiring. We have probably about 80 positions out. If anyone has any questions about any of the positions and our process, I'm going to drop my information into the chat, but please give us a call. I would love to speak to anybody who is interested in learning more about the port, becoming part of the port. I know my coworker is also here, Amisha. Amisha, please put your information in there as well. So we are part of the diversity, equity, and inclusion team. The other thing I wanted to share with you is that we have changed our name. We used to be known as Equal Opportunity, but we have changed it to diversity, equity, and inclusion to sort of represent all of the elements of our program. And in addition to that,
they have whole departments,
diversity out of the
just
human
dedicated
resources
to
department, so that we would be more. We have some autonomy in our own department and function now. So we're not connected to human resources or contracting, but we still do oversee all the opportunities in terms of employment, contracting, and also accessibility. So again, I just wanted to make a couple of announcements. Our commissioner, as you know, has been to the meetings a couple of times, Commissioner Rafael Castellanos. He was also going to attend, but something came up, so he was not able to do that, but he will be here in the future. I'm very excited to hear from Andrew Strong and also Kim Desmond. So without any further ado and not taking any more time, thank you so much, Ellen.
Thank you, Shirley, and congratulations. I didn't know all that had happened. Gee.
Yeah, exciting.
All right. Thank you so much. I would like to introduce our two leaders, but we have a technical problem going on Facebook, on YouTube, and I wanted Dennis to check into it. Someone named Mr. Santa Ana needs to mute himself because it's very distracting. Dennis, I don't know if you could take care of that. It's not. It doesn't seem to be coming through Zoom. So I don't know what's going on.
Interesting.
But I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Okay.
Very distracting. Okay. Thank you.
That's weird because
I want to introduce our two leaders.
the only
today,
thing that's coming through
none other than Kim Desmond,
let's see,
who is the first newly hired director of diversity.
Well, see, the thing is,
of the city
okay,
of
obviously
San
Zoom is Zoom,
Diego,
but
and she comes to us by way of Denver, Colorado.
YouTube. YouTube is only sending out what I give it. I'm only giving it Zoom.
Ken and Andrew, you guys can play off of each other.
Yeah, no, she said
whatever
Zoom.
You want, but this is going to be a very interactive session. And with the questions will be at the end, though, because we want to make sure that all your points are spoken to.
Let me see. Wait.
So I'm just going to introduce Kim and Andrew, and you guys can take it from there. Thank you, first of all, for taking your time out, your busy schedules, to be here on a Saturday. I know your lives are hectic right now during the week, and you do need your Saturdays to rest, but you took 2 hours out of your schedule to be with us, and we certainly appreciate it. I'm going to give the floor over to you. Thank you.
Well, I'm looking at my intro, and thank you to all of you for inviting me into the space, as I am new to the city, literally 4 months in, and so I've met with a number of you. I see Miss Regina here and a couple other folks who I've connected with. So thank you for welcoming me into your city. I most certainly am getting to know the city and traversing the many looping highways every day. Andrew, I'm gonna ask you, how do you want to play this? I know we have a lot of the same philosophy in terms of how we organize.
Yeah.
Read me. What do you think? How do you want to tag team this?
How about you take the lead? I'll follow you, and thank you for allowing us to have the space. And Ellen, I very much appreciate it. And Kim Desmond, so glad that she's here. And just want y'all to know, as we start this conversation, Kim and I, we plan to be attached at the hip with this work, because we know it's very intersected between the county and the city. And for years, county and the city hasn't worked that well together, right? And around this work, we got to work together, and we got to do it right. So. But I definitely give Kim the floor, and I do have a PowerPoint that I can share too. So Kim, if you have one, happy to just go back and forth after that, and then jump into questions. That might be good.
Perfect. And so you will see me and Andrew's presentations are similar, because the work to do systemic racism, whether me coming from Denver, Colorado, or any city in the country, is really collectively organizing around a theory of change to share best practices in the way in which, how do you do anti-racist work in local governments? So I will share my screen, and then Andrew, I can stop sharing, or you can jump in off of the theory of change that we both kind of talk through, if that works. And as me and Andrew, we learn from each other, I would say weekly around this work. And so we constantly also are sharing ways to say, there is no singular way to do this work. And I like to say, if it was done, it would be done. And most certainly, these are systems historically that were not designed for us to see equity. So I always like to start with that, to say, the system is working very well. It was never designed to do the things that produce equitable outcomes, because it was not designed to serve us in the ways that we're seeing play out in all the different ways that even are talked about on this call. So for me, what's important is to just start out with just saying, it is the first office, first position, but I always like to acknowledge, I'll just say this, I love my city. And I miss my city, I miss my family, miss my friends. And so I'm well aware of the fact that I'm in a new city. And so I just wanted to start out by saying I'm honored to be in this position. I know what this position means. And I'm honored to learn about the city through your experiences in the ways in which you've been doing this work prior to me being here. I am not naive enough to know that. Like, I know this work has happened way before this office. And so I want to just acknowledge and thank you all for continually doing this work before this office was here. And so thank you for that, because I wouldn't be here without many of you on this call. So to get into this work, I always like to start out with my purpose. And I purposely start out with this quote by Patricia Hill Collins because it reminds me and it settles me in it's heart-pulling, soul-breaking work to do anti-racist work in government. And I'm a very spiritual person. And so I like to say that I was spiritually positioned to do this work and come into the second city building, got an office. This is my second city doing it. And I've worked with other cities across the country in the same way, is that working within the system that was not designed for us, Andrew and I have to challenge power structures from the inside every day. And we have to do so in ways to speak multiple languages, as Patricia Hill Collins states, to use that power convincingly to change the things that we know are inequitable. And so for me, my purpose is just this, is to ensure that we are dismantling systemic racism, but more importantly, that we are revisioning and redesigning what does equitable systems really look like in this country, because they have not existed in terms of the racial disparities that we live and see every day. This work is not just work for me, as I am a Black woman and I experience the things that I am working to address. And so I appreciate the framing around the behavioral health component, the racial trauma, the racial battle fatigue, because we are, Andrew and I, we are people. When you have a Black woman and a Black man, who the things that we are seeing and doing, it pulls at our soul. And there is no singular way to do this work. And so I've actually started out with all of our department directors by just saying that. I say, you see this office and don't assume that it's as simple as me changing racism just because this office is new. That is not a thing. If you think I'm going to come here and solve racism with this office and with my being, that is not a truth. And so I level set, because I don't want to dishonor current advocates and our ancestors who've been doing this work. Like my grandmother's from the South of Texas. And so I honor her in this work by saying she used to pick cotton and I'm here in this position. So that tells you a lot right there. And so I'm honored to be here, honored to be able to do the things that I can, but I'm also not naive to say there are some days that I know Andrew can attest to this. You leave that office and you're like, whew, it didn't go my way today. It didn't go my way today. But we wake up the next morning and try to figure out a different way to align power to address inequities in the things that we're charged with. And that includes in budget decisions. So I just wanted to start for me with my purpose, because that's important. And I do this work in honor of my grandmother. And she, like I said, she came from the South. And if she didn't move to Denver, Colorado, I would not be here. And so it's so interesting me moving to San Diego, because I like to think about my family story has always been one of migration. My dad was from Chicago and my mom was from Paris, Texas, and they met in Denver. And so I like to think that that's been the story of our folks too. We've moved around, tried to find spaces to make a difference. And so when I do this work, I always call out her name, Annie Ruth, because I am because she is. And I'm honored to be able to be in a new place to try to do the things and to give my time, talent, and experience in a new city. The way that I do that, most certainly, I will say, is learning from you all. What you get from me as a leader, I am not hierarchical. And so I am not coming into San Diego assuming that I know everything. I am literally 4 months into the city. Literally. Half the time I don't even know where I'm at. And so I'm coming in and I am counting on your experience, your ideation to say, how do we continually jointly challenge these systems? And then also for me to create space for all of us to share our ideas, the things that we can do to change the disparities that we're seeing. And so what you see here in front of you is a theory of change that is used by the Government Alliance on Racial Equity. And this work is exploding across the country. There are over 400 cities that are now doing this work. I am not naive to know that, like, that does not mean that this work, these offices popping up, is not going to say that racism is done. I work closely with the national partners who's overseeing this work and using this theory of change. And when we get together, other positions like myself, we talk about that to say, we know why we're here. And so this theory of change is being used.
Pretty good. Mika's being all right for the moment. I mean, she's not being real.
Can someone mute?
Trying to do her. It's about me.
Hey, Steve Step, you need to go on mute, Steve Step.
Being very successful.
Please, you're on mute. Please mute.
That's Steve Step. That's.
Yeah, she's just doing it in the chat, you know.
Mr. Step, can you go on mute?
That's this lady, you know. I mean, this lady is cool.
Dennis, can you mute Stephen Step? Okay, thank you. Okay.
This is the fun part about social media and technology. And so you got to just give space. Hello, Stephen. And so just want to, hey, it's technology. So to get back to this theory of change, what I like about this is that I can pick up the phone, or to Andrew's case, he'll tell you, I just walk over. I'm like, I'm walking over because he's not far from me, right? And the same thing for my sister girl here, Bisha. I see you on the call as well. And so like, we're working together with this. And so just want to shout out the ports. I see you on here, Miss Taylor, you're doing your thing as well over there in the port. We are talking about ways to normalize a conversation around talking about disparities. Now that's very important because you cannot out-train your way out of racism. That is not a thing. I have done, countless numbers of training, and I've actually measured training, I've evaluated training, I've done training, and turns out that racism is still here. You cannot out-train your way out of racism. Normalizing means you create a space to talk about it so that way people can name where the disparities are at and the indicators and outcomes. And so normalizing really helps ready or large workforces. We have over 11,000 city employees, and I have to make sure they understand what is systemic racism. Some folks may not even understand that this country was built on systemic racism to economically exploit Black folks. They don't even know that. That's just being out of way honest, right? Which is why you see this conversation around normalizing being so huge. If they normalize, what is equity? Equity is being used as a symbol, as a word that equity, I'm using equity lens. What does that really mean to do the work? And so when you're normalizing it, you're clarifying what is equity, what is an equity lens, and why are we doing this work, and what are the indicators that we're jointly moving towards. And then when you do that, when you have large workforces like we do in San Diego, you organize around the work. You have to organize, you have to make sure you're being responsive and authentically engaging with community. You have to make sure that you're creating the teaming structure to understand how to move the work and create plans and strategies to dismantle, but then to re-envision the programs and policies that we want to see. So organizing is a way to say you're organizing your city employees to be on the same page with rolling out a platform to create strategies in their departments. And so there are cities that have like racial equity core teams, for example. That's an organizing strategy. Operationalizing basically means you use tools. One of the tools that are talked about right now that's also spreading across the country is budget equity frameworks. And so this is where I give a head nod to my brother, Andrew. You running through and trying to do a lot with the budget equity work here in San Diego. And so that is an example of operationalize. What is a tool that you're using to critique fiscal budget decisions? And that is a tool. That also include racial equity toolkits in terms of how do you think through complex root cause problems that we know are riddled with racial disparities and go through a process to get your city departments to really create tangible strategies and have responses that are fiscally connected. So these are all part of the tools that you use, and that's why it's called operationalize. It's essentially the tools at your disposal to make sure you're responsive to the way you do the work. I didn't create this theory of change. This theory of change, I'll be honest, has been evolving with other offices across the country by way of saying, how do we keep doing this work more rigorously? We're in a time in history where the field of these offices will continually evolve because they are popping up. And I'll be honest, I can't tell you the number of cities that I've worked with or talked to. And we're all saying, I don't have all the solutions. We don't have, and Andrew shaking his head. But what is powerful is that when you can pick up the phone and call San Antonio, Washington, it's powerful to say, well, what are you doing? So what I like to say at this point in history, we are all now having the same conversation about local government doing anti-racist work. The city of Seattle was the first city to do this work. And I'll tell you, they stay on my call. I call them hey, what are you doing new? What are you trying? What are you failing at? A part of this work is also failing, because there is no blueprint for this work. It's up and down, forward and back. And so we're sharing the things, I tried that didn't work. I tried this, I innovated that. We tried that. We heard an idea from a community member that said this. And so part of this work is really learning how to even fail and to say, what can I try differently? And really operating to say, let us all keep sharing in these 3 areas to help us further our goal, which is to eliminate systemic racism and racial disparities, but also not to be naive about the power of the apparatus that has never, that is here. It's built to do exactly what it's doing. And so when things happen in this country, I'm not surprised. It's doing exactly what it's doing. Me coming from Denver, Colorado to San Diego, the racism is not different. It's here, it's the same, right? As a Black woman, I can see it in education, I can see it in health. And so for me, it becomes just really learning what is the opportunities by way of this policy context to make sure we can dismantle the things that we're seeing in our programs, in our practices, in our policies. So I operate from that theory of change, and I know Andrew as well with his, and we actually are already sharing where I'm like, oh, you're gonna try that? I'm impressed with the titles of his new positions where I'm like, I like the name of that. And so these are just things that we're sharing. Misha, I'm sharing with her as well. So we're all together trying to figure out how to do this work. And so with that, we want to make sure that the apparatus of racism, you got to look at the way in which we're envisioning a new way to do the work. And that's really looking at our policies, our programs, and our budget decisions. And that is in the operational lane, operationalizing theory of change for the work that I just showed or shared in the next slide. And so I'll stop there, because I think the dialogue will be, for me, more important to hear what your thoughts are. And I'll just close with this before I hand it to Andrew, is to say, I don't have all the solutions. I like to count the fact that my 4 months here plus your years of experience, it adds more and more. We can't do this work alone, Andrew and myself, without you. This work is soul pulling, it's exhausting. I don't know about you, Andrew. I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes just like writing down things and have to remind myself self-care is real. And so if folks have better ideas to do stuff, I'm listening. Because I can tell you, I will hold space, and Andrew will tell you, or I'll say, I didn't think about that. I will try that. I've met with so many organizations being here and leaders where I'm saying, we're all leaders. Let's just start there. We're all leaders. And I'm like, you know what? Let's put all of our thinking together to address the things, because no one's going to help us address racism that is tearing apart generations, that impacts all of us on this call. So I'll stop there and throw it to you, Andrew, to see how you want to roll.
Thanks, Kim. And I'll just share my screen. I appreciate your purpose. I appreciate you. I appreciate your passion around this. And I appreciate the fact that we're in lockstep with like how we want to approach this work, and knowing that you're talking about some systemic structures, man, and structures that's been built through a lens of racist goals, and you talk about over decades and centuries. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done to change these structures. And Erin Meek said a lot. She hit the nail on the head when you're talking about things like the court systems, things like jury selection. I think some of y'all watched the Kyle Rittenhouse jury selection and how that actually went. He actually reached into a box and selected his own jury, and then, so it's so much that needs to be done when you're talking about these structures. And like Kim was talking about, we both have a purpose and a passion for this work, and it stems from who we are at our core and our foundation. And I know a lot of people on this call, there's a lot of people I might not know. So if you want to get to know me, you want to get to know Kim, I know she's probably just like me. Feel free to reach out, but it stems from who we are at our core, right? I'm originally from Shreveport, Bossier City, Louisiana. I've been in the county government for 13 years. I was in the Navy for 9 years as a hospital corpsman, but before I joined the Navy, I was a Black man in the South, right? So it's, and within my neighborhood that I grew up in, there's people driving around with gun racks and Confederate flags, right? And, so racism been in my face, and I've been, discriminated against like everybody on this call, so the weight of this work that we walk into every day, it's intense, and we very much appreciate your support. but we also want you to continue to hold us accountable, but hold us in your prayers as we move through this space. So, but thank you very much for allowing this space and opportunity to connect, talk a little bit about what we're doing at the county. Kim mentioned that, there's a lot of cities across the nation that are doing this work, not so much in the county governments. The county governments are just now getting into this space. And just like the National Association of Counties are setting up a work group of folks. So you have a few counties that are starting to really dive deep into the space, setting up offices and working. It really stemmed from 2020, right? Just like our office that was created in 2020 around all the current events that were happening, right? It's not like, Ahmaud Arbery was murdered in the street and this trial is going on right now, and George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. It's not like they were the first ones who got killed at the hands of police officers, right? It's not like, Asian Pacific Islanders weren't experiencing hate crimes prior to COVID-19, but that exacerbated it. And then, thanks to, the Trump era and, people feeling even more confident to walk around in stores with KKK hoodies and swastikas on their face mask in the San Diego region, all this stuff was in your face, right? But it's not like this was new. This is nothing new for us. But what the board decided to do, because they had a shift in leadership from more conservative to more progressive, they actually decided to put some resources into this type of work within county government, right? Seeing that trend across the nation. So they actually put $5 million into a bucket for racial justice work. And that's how our office got established. But then we went on a mission to really embark on co-creating what this work should look like with the community, right? Because I'm going to talk a little bit about the 6-part strategy that Kim was talking about earlier. But for us and for Kim, I know, and for everybody who's in this space doing this work, it's important to co-create what this means with the community. That's the only way you're going to change or start to change what government looks like, right? Is that, instead of the decision makers within government acting on communities based on what we think we know, we got to co-create that change by listening to the folks who've been fighting against county and city government for years, right? So the first thing we did was we co-created this mission statement and some roles and responsibilities for the office over 2020 and then getting into 2021. So I think I mentioned I've been in this role since February this year. Just got my staff in June this year, so I'll show you who those folks are now. But as we continue to, put these words into action, right? Because these are words, and I always like to read these words out loud because you don't often hear these type of words being talked about, right, embraced within government walls. So, but as we begin to put these into action, right, and to make it practical and to start breaking down those structures and teach people what that is, it's important to co-create that. And when I say co-create, that means definitely working with community folks, not just our people who we say have been community leaders for 20 plus years, but really community folks, right? People like you on this call to do their work. So here's our mission statement. The San Diego County's Office of Equity and Racial Justice partners with the community to co-create transformative, enduring structural and systemic change in San Diego County government. We bridge San Diego County departments and community voices to design both policies and practices to advance equity. We champion belonging for all and advocate for people suffering from structural and systemic racism and inclusion, right? Like you haven't heard people saying within government walls, we want to co-create and use community voices to help design policies and practices. Like that is a change and shift in mindset. And with that change and shift in mindset comes the training and teaching of all those leaders within county government who've been there for 20 years, right? And saying, okay, now you're not just going to create these actions, right? And these practices and these processes, like purchasing, contracting, for instance, or like our budgeting process, or our child welfare services practices on our own. We need to sit down with the folks who those policies and practices impact and affect or have excluded, and let's change those things. So here's my team. So we just got staffed up in June of this year. I have 3 equity impact managers, and we actually grew from a total of 3 staff, myself and 2 equity impact managers, to 3 equity impact managers and 2 other additional staff, 1 management fellow, and our administrative support. And to tell you the truth, and Kim will tell you this, we've already seen the need that we have. And unfortunately, when people create these offices, they don't automatically give you resources. You got to prove that you need this stuff and how it's going to work within the organization. But I already see us growing and expanding and to have more staff, more resources to actually get in the community and do more work, right? And to fight for policies and practices and changes within the organization with community partners. So be on the lookout. I see us definitely expanding. And if we have those positions, I'll definitely come here and recruit. So some of y'all might remember that back on January 12th, the board declared racism a public health crisis. And it was more than just a statement, right? It was an important statement that they did, but it was more than just a statement. They didn't just need to acknowledge it. They actually had to say, okay, now that we acknowledge it, we have this office. Here's some things before we even get this office off the ground, we got to start with, right? And that's adding equity and belonging to the county's mission, vision, values, and strategic plan. So we're down the road doing that. You're going to see a new strategic plan from the county starting in January, and it's leading with equity. We have a whole initiative around equity, but that really informs how we look at our board letters. Now we're requiring all departments to do an equity assessment on their projects before they come to the board. So you'll see an equity impact statement on all of our county board letters that talks about the equity impact. Now, truth to form, they're not all good equity impact statements, right? And what our office is going to be doing is holding folks accountable to saying, go back, right? We need to do a deeper assessment to give us a real equity impact on this. So we're getting better at that, but we also lean on the public to read those equity impact statements and call us on the fact that we might not have done our equity analysis the way we should. So we need y'all to hold us accountable with that. And then enhancing our community data and community input and data collection, right? It's critical to make sure we do analysis and see how the outcomes and see how we're changing using data analysis, right? And outcomes and performance measures. So what are we doing? We're laying a solid foundation. We gotta start from the very bottom, folks. We gotta really create a foundation for structural and systemic change. And that's about, thinking about how this government works and then starting from the bottom up and changing it, right? And that starts with engaging community voices in a different manner. And that's, some departments have done this, over the years traditionally, but I'm talking about across our entire county, from treasurer tax collectors, assessor recorder's office, purchasing, contracting. Not the public safety group has to do it more intentionally, like sheriff and district attorney's office, engage the community voices differently. But then, like Kim was talking about, we have to create those equity and racial justice lenses for county departments to look through. And that's things like a budget equity tool, racial equity assessment, and then training folks on how to use those tools and what that means. And then again, using data analysis like I talked about previously. And I'm not gonna beat this to death right now because I know Kim went through this already, the governmental alliance on race and equity theory of change, or the 6-part strategy. But I do want to just pull out, they talked a lot about, how we got to make sure we lead with race, right? Because, too often folks want to hide behind the fact of equity and not say it's really about racial equity, right? And they want to immediately jump into the intersectionalities, which is important. You got to think about gender. You got to think about social equity and economic status. You got to think about religion, but you got to lead with race because we know, right? We know that Black people in our society, we still haven't overcome that original sin of slavery, right? And from that, things like Jim Crow laws, things like redlining, all those things has really put Black folks in our society behind the curve, right? So how do we, through an equity lens, right, create strategic approaches to make sure we lift everybody up, but we got to make sure we give the people who have been suffered and oppressed the most what they really need to be successful, and that's us as Black people. So we operate with urgency and accountability. We got to organize and build capacity. Kim really hit this on the head. I like to say we got to organize like we're organizers fighting against the county inside the county. We got to bring on staff, right? We got to bring on leaders, change makers, folks who've been fighting against the county to help us change and make decisions within the county government. But we also got to train our staff and our employees on what structural systemic racism really is, right? What's constituted that from all those things I talked about, Jim Crow, slavery, mass incarceration, how those systems, how our systems and all those things, right, have been built over time through that lens. And so now we got to break it down, right? And then we got to implement those racial equity tools and be data driven. And then just real quick, I want to go over a couple of programs. So we're in the process of building out our strategic plan, right? We're in the process of building some tools to help folks look through equity lens and also train our employees on those things. We already wrote out a couple of trainings specifically to our employees and to our leadership around equity and what we call Equity 2.0, target universalism and strategies. But we also have some specific key projects and initiatives that we're already working on. And one really important one that everybody on this call needs to be aware of is a social equity program for cannabis. And in my mind, this is going to be one of the most significant things we could do to really address the harms that were done by the war on drugs and overcriminalization of marijuana, but also to invest in our most underserved communities and our Black and brown populations. And here's why. Because from commercial cannabis, right, regulation and licensing and taxation, there's going to be a whole lot of money generated, right? So it's going to be important for us to have that money be reinvested into the communities that need it the most, that were affected by the war on drugs or criminalization of marijuana, but our most underserved Black and brown communities, right? The social equity program is going to have opportunity to be able to make sure that those tax dollars are invested in those programs, but it's also going to be able to provide access to folks who would want to participate in the commercial cannabis industry, right? Not necessarily, and definitely not placing these businesses within our communities that don't need them, but allowing folks to participate in the opportunity to be able to actually make some money, right, and change their own personal outcomes off of the commercial cannabis industry. Uplifting Boys and Men of Color initiative is all about the school to prison pipeline, knowing that there's tons of interventions and people out there doing work in the space. So how do we uplift that work? How do we invest in that work, whether they're internship programs, whether they're targeted programs for justice involved boys and men of color? And we already had one forum around this. We're going to have a couple of more forums, but we're not waiting just to hear from folks because we already know that there's issues in the community. So we've already met with people like a Stacey Dent in Southeastern San Diego, who has a great program who we want to uplift and see how we can support and fund. But we're also going to be creating a specific internship program that centers around county government and focusing on things like the Black Youth Initiative and expanding those types of programs as well. The Community Equity Impact Fund, which is very important. We want to make sure we do our best to give county dollars, right, to the community folks who are doing boots on the ground work around equity and racial justice with as little strings as possible attached, right? But we also want to help those organizations capacity build, and that's what this Community Equity Impact Fund is all about. And we already talked a lot about the budget equity tool, which I think is really important, is critical, because this is about resource allocation. This is about not just changing our policies. This is about saying, okay, now departments, when you make those individual budget requests, let's talk about how those budget requests are impacting equity within the communities of color, within underserved communities, social economic depressed communities. And then if it's not, how can we make sure that they are? And if it's not, and there's nothing we can do about it, should we shift that budget request to be something totally different? That's how you really change the outcomes of some of these communities, right? Is by putting our money where our mouth is, regardless if that community is in a city jurisdiction. Because for years, we've been saying, okay, cities have their budgets, counties have their budgets, we're unincorporated. We're not going to share funding with the city within these city communities because the cities take care of that. There's a lot more crossover now and support that the county's been willing to do from a policy decision-making area. So we got to start translating that into our budget equity as well. And then last thing I'll mention is that we are the lead staff for the Leon Williams Human Relations Commission that Chair Nash is the chair of. And I got to mention that she's doing a phenomenal job. She's holding that down. If y'all think she's busy with everything else she's doing, she is very busy trying to make sure that this commission is actually substantive and is doing some real work. But she's been a great chair so far. 31 member seat, 28 members seated already. They already have 6 subcommittees. Aaron Meek was talking a lot about public safety and really changing the culture and changing the laws and practices. We have a public safety subcommittee that is really engaged in that work. So it will be helpful to, even have Aaron Meek and some of you other folks who are, it really is involved in that type of work, come to those subcommittees and really talk about the needs that are in those communities. Policies and procedures, which is all about looking at county policies and changing, looking specifically for structural and systemic racism, but let's get community input on how we change that. Our communication subcommittee, legislative subcommittee, we're going to have an annual awards ceremony that's coming up on December 10th. You'll see some promotion about that. And we have a youth subcommittee, which is just getting off the ground. And then lastly, I'll say they're just now wrapping up their strategic planning, which is good. and really going to be putting some meat behind the goals of those strategic plan. So with that, that's my contact information. We'll put this in the chat, but looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew and Kim, for the great presentation. And we have about 45 minutes left. I like to close on time because it is on a Saturday. So I'm going to open the floor up to questions. Feel free, folks who are on this call, and I'm watching Facebook Live for questions as well. This is our time, and these are Black folks on this line. As we know, Black folks are the most underserved, under-resourced. The data and the facts say it. It's not emotion, it's facts. And so I would like to open the floor up to folks that would like to ask these two great leaders questions. Any questions?
I've been trying to raise my hand, but I can't find the hand raising thing.
Oh, hi, Eddie. How are you doing, Dr. Price?
Okay, I know there's a thing somewhere, but I can't find the thing. Thank you for everything that everybody does on this call, not just the presenters, but everybody else seems like they're extremely busy. As some of you know, I'm in the environmental and energy industry, and I haven't heard much about that. So I would really like to perhaps sit down with Kim and Andrew and perhaps the lady from the port to actually get the temperature on where we stand on this, because there's a lot of inequities and racial injustices that go on in the energy industry and the environmental industry, and they need to be addressed. Also, I'd like to add before I shut up, because my coffee just kicked in, so you're going to benefit from that. I've noticed in the work that I do that the term equity and social justice is losing its value in conversations, right? It used to be those two words used to be extremely valuable last year. But the further we get away from George Floyd's untimely death, the less value those two words seem to hold. And, you know, two things about that. We need to take this opportunity while we can and ride a little bit harder. And also we need to recognize that, right? Because we're going to start getting different answers to questions next month, right? And eventually we will just become a checkbox of equity. Yeah, check. We talked to Andrew, we talked to Kim, that's all we need to do. Right. And I don't want it to go like that. Mm-hmm. So I just want to put that on the table. Thank you. Oh, and I didn't cuss. I'm pretty happy about that. I did not say one cuss word. And I want everybody to clap. Thank you.
Eddie, can I just chime in on that? Because we had a lot of conversations about environmental justice and you know, and what that space looks like specifically for county government. One of the things I thought our office was going to be touching a lot of that, right? But you know, but as soon as I could blink my eyes, they created an Office of Environmental Justice, and they started in the county of San Diego, and then they started bringing on environmental justice type folks to do that work. But note, and I've told you this, and Clovis, I see you on the call too. I think I saw Clovis on the call. You know that I'm going to be attached at the hip with our land use and environment group to make sure they look through that lens, and to make sure that they're engaging in this community, right, as they make those decisions. Because again, to the point about that being an unincorporated area, and we should typically focus on that, it has been kind of a struggle to say, okay, we still need to focus in the city. We still need to listen to folks within, like, you know, southeast of San Diego, Barty Logan, Lemon Grove, who are suffering the same issues when you're talking about the environment. So I got you on that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll echo what Andrew just stated. And Eddie, thank you for the comment. Climate justice, I can tell you it's the same in my seat as well. What I'm glad to say is that my office has a climate justice fund in partnership with our climate action plan. And so literally I have been reviewing and talking with the team around, like, looking at the climate equity indicators to say, you know, what are we missing? And I think sometimes we think about climate justice, environmental justice in a silo, not thinking about the connectiveness of what we mean by climate justice. So how do you talk about rising heat temperatures in context of exposure to lead in context of pollution in the air. And so for me, it's most certainly also connected to street conditions. So all these things, what I'm talking to that department about is like, let's not look at climate justice as a siloed conversation. And what does it mean for us to have tangible outcomes where we know where the indicators are showing us where the inequities are at? So you're spot on. I can say most certainly my office will be involved in that. And I would love to hear more around what some of your thoughts are in general.
I would like to say, be careful what you ask for, Kim, because I will give you my thoughts, girl. Thank you. Thank you very much, both of you. And thank you, Ellen.
You're welcome. Arameek?
Thank you, Chair Ellen. So Dr. Eddie Price said something really important. He said, the more we get away from the death of George Floyd is where we are going to see the words equity and racial justice lose its value. And I think that's important that we touch on there. Andrew, your presentation was very robust. And I think on a county level, it is important, and everything that you spoke to pertains to public safety, because when we create therapists, counselors, cool down centers, crisis responders, all of those things, and we're teaching them what racial justice and equity looks like in doing those trainings, especially for those who are doing direct services. It's really important, especially for those leaders that are leading up those departments, right? So for your standpoint, I'm going to, this question is more so for Kim. Your office, that office was created really around what takes place regarding policing in San Diego. I'm just going to be honest with you, helped to create it, know everything that that office was supposed to do. With that being said, everything seems very internal, and it seems very much more so about the internal things that need to happen, and they definitely need to happen, right? Because like I said, we need to deal with the roots and the fruits. But what is your plan specifically around public safety? And I'm just going to be like, clear and honest with you. And you probably can't say this over this call because I don't want you getting any trouble. But when you can reach out to those who are on these calls to really talk about what you need from the community members in regards to push certain things forward, because myself and Dante are the co-chairs of the Chief of Police Black Advisory Board. We just spent $250,000 on another survey to say, again, we have so many surveys and so many reports to say what the issues around racial justice are pertaining to our public safety and our policing. We have so many. Every piece of money continues to be used on surveys and reports and not actual implementation and doing the work. You should have been the advisor as the newly appointed person in that position around whether or not we should spend $240,000 as a city on a survey about the things that we already know because they've been proven in other reports. So my question to you is, what is your plan around policing specifically and public safety specifically? Because we know that public safety does not just mean policing, right? There's so many other elements that Andrew kind of tapped into of what public safety actually is and could look like from the county standpoint. And so what does that look like for you? What is your plan around policing specifically and public safety?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Let me just start out by, I'm smiling because Andrew made a comment that I'm going to bounce off of to answer your question, which is you blink your eye, you nod your head, and something happens because it's a massive workforce. So let me just start there. And I'm 2 months in, so let me just start there, right? And so my first thing I want to answer your response was, yes, I would love to sit down with you, Dante, and anyone who will provide some context and history around the things you've advocated for. So I think that's part of me just learning. So I'll just start there. To your second part of your question, what I can say to you right now, being that literally I am new to this position, I'm in the process of not only talking with our mayor, but also with our police chief around the things that they have done, things that they're thinking about doing, and then ways in which they're getting advice from the many advisory boards that are connected to the city. Advisory boards, commissions. And so I would love to hear more around like the things that you and Dante and other groups have particularly advocated for. You can't, in my opinion, I'm very clear, when you do systemic racism work, to not talk about policing and the structure of what that means for our people, it's tough, it's top of mind. I can't tell you the number of conversations I've sat down already with our chief several times. That was like before I got my laptop, I'm like, point me in the direction of the chief of police, right? And so I can say to you this, is that I have not dismantled racism in policing, right? And so I can't say that I have a bold agenda yet to do that. What I can say is that I will most certainly continually learn what it is that Mayor Gloria has committed to, which I'm in a process of learning those things by way of my own briefings, as well as talking to the chief around things that he's doing or not doing, all those things. And so I would love to hear more about your perspective to really give me some context, because to what you just stated, I can only move at the speed of what I know, what I don't know, right? And so I would love to hear more about some of your thoughts, your ideas, and things that came into play. And I can just tell you this, as a Black woman, policing, like that's one that really, that's one that's it's an ongoing conflict conversation in the fabric of this country. And so I look forward to all of the ideas and ways we're going to re-envision a system that was never built to, it was built to exploit us. And so to really re-envision that, I could tell you, I left Denver with our policing and things is still the same, right? Like I was in the emergency response when things were happening with George Floyd. And so I'm with you as a Black woman. Policing in this country needs to radically be re-envisioned. And so I look forward to the conversations, and I look forward to learning from you all and other folks who are really looking at ways to do that by way of practice. I do actually agree with you. Is I can say this as a new person to the city, and I'm saying it to my department directors, I can tell you the number of reports and studies that are on my desk, literally on my desk in my inbox. And I'm like, hey, we've studied racism, and Andrew's laughing because people are great at studying things. And so I'll give you just my talking point by way of answering your question, what I have said. Studies come as a result of accountability. I can be accountable to doing a study and a survey, but that does not mean transformation. And so what I'm saying to folks, excuse me, my throat went out. I am telling folks that I get your studies and you're spending money fiscally on it, to what you stated. I want transformation. You can give me 5 studies and you've done the action step, you did the study, but that does not mean that you have transformational outcomes that are creating the disparities in a system that was not designed for us. And so for me, I'm almost telling folks, the studies, we've studied racism. There are so many scholars, and I work with a lot of them, who study it over and over again. And so I in this position, I want transformation, and I want the elimination of racism and the disparities that we see. So would love to sit down with you. I will put my email in the chat box to go forward, but I hope I answered your question, because it most certainly is a very complex one that keeps me up at night, especially in this city, to catch up and say, what are we doing in this space?
Thank you, Kim. And Abanina, I hope I'm saying your name right. I see you. I just want to make this quick comment. Kim, I hear everything you're saying. And so since there are, people on this call committed to this work and this conversation, I really want to say this. I need us to all be engaged in a way in which we haven't, because how do I say this in the nicest way? Kim and Andrew and Kim referenced Mayor Todd Gloria's agenda and plan. These things are things that people have been talking about since they got into office and before they got into office. And so I'm really at a point of frustration because we've gave so many recommendations. The mayor has an advisory board. The chief has an advisory board. Not do they have just the Black advisory board, but they have multiple advisory boards, right? And so we've continued to give our recommendations and continue, and I have personal relationships with them, but they are willing to give us offices and not support the people in these positions and not support the work just to check off a box, right? And I think Eddie hit it on the head of saying they're just checking off boxes. And so what we have to do is then say, you know, Andrew and Kim, we want to make sure, you know, y'all don't get kicked out or get fired. So we also have to be, and that's why I'm always being the loudest person in the room, because we have to be the advocates for them, because I think their heart is in the right place, but then they also answer to a higher power. And these are the things that we've been asking for, and we can't just continue to settle for offices being created and that work not coming out of that. And I just want to say that in this space, because I want to just be honest with what we're dealing with right now. There's multiple things that would have cost less than what we are spending in regards to recommendations we made, and they chose not to take up those recommendations because of the morale of policing and our political climate. So I just want to say that we have to figure out as BAPAC a way to support them in ways where we are the advocates on the behalf of the office and the work that they're trying to complete and do. And I'm done for the rest of the day.
No, I appreciate, so I think I want to just point to one thing that you said, that your frustration and anger is an appropriate response for systemic racism. I almost appreciate hearing, because I know how there are some days where I am so frustrated with just doing this work where I didn't get everything that I wanted. And I gotta let myself feel in a label that frustration is, I'm just hurt. I'm hurt that this country has not done it at the speed of the way in which things should change. And I can tell you that's the hardest part about being in this position with me and Andrew, is that like, we're dealing with an apparatus. Like I sit and I read reports. There's been the ones I've been reading while I'm here. I can name the countless ones. It just breaks my spirit and my heart. And I have to go wake up next day saying, wow, this disparity is still there. And my title is Chief of Race and Equity, right? And so that is the hardest part about what you're saying, is that I actually expect, and I know that there's even colleagues on this call who do this work. This work is forward and backwards and around. We can't do it alone. I actually value and say that, like, when we can't run further in some ways, we do need advocates and organizations to keep running in the ways in which you are running. We cannot do it alone. This apparatus of racism does not allow for me and Andrew to solve racism in the way that we're constructed. We are constructed in the system that's created racism.
That's right.
Let's just start there. Like, and so I'm very clear about, as a Black woman, and what you will get from me, I think, to do these positions, you gotta have a little bit of good trouble in you and a little bit of like, I'm not playing with you. Because where I'm at right here, I know that this work is gonna take soul searching, decades of dismantling, and there's gonna be things I can't win in. That's the apparatus of racism. And so I wake up and I try to figure out ways to heal myself in that, and to say, that one was painful. Because we're in those rooms when we want to see things that are different sometimes as well. And so I am well aware of when a new office is a chat box, well aware. Just because you have a new office, me and Andrew's face is everywhere. And I almost laugh sometimes. I'm like, we're everywhere. We're not. Just because you have me and Andrew on a picture doesn't mean we saw racism in local government.
That's right.
It means that me and Andrew are now in an apparatus that was never built to serve us.
Right.
So we have to really look at ways to use what we can, because historically, that's what my ancestors did. They didn't get all the things done for me. My grandmother, I'm in this position. She didn't get all the things she wanted for me and her grandchildren, but she gave me enough. It's an office that's talking about, to Andrew's point, I feel so good when I go in a room and say, guess what? We're talking about racism. My grandmother, she couldn't do that. She was the service. And so I totally hear you and actually appreciate what you just stated, because the frustration is one that it's hard for us in these spaces. And I think when you get someone like me and Andrew, I'll just say it. I'm frustrated. I'm Black in America today. I woke up every day and my job is raising equity. Pulls at my soul. So I thank you for your comments, and I thank you for labeling it. And I look forward to chatting with you personally or anyone around, like, what you thinking?
You know, to say something real quick. I'm sorry, Ellen.
Yeah,
I know you got hands up.
Yeah, I got hands up. Yeah.
Yeah, just real quick. But the equity, and Mika and Eddie said this about the equity going away, right? Or people that, you know, this is the moment, so we need to take advantage of it because it's starting to lose that momentum, and not just because we're further away from George Floyd, but also when you start to talk about equity and define what it is, people kind of get terrified and people don't want to do it anymore. So let's go talk about diversity and inclusion again, not equity, because equity is something totally different. Mm-hmm. It's totally different. That's actually really trying to create change. So let's be quiet on that.
Abina,
can I talk now?
You can ask your question. Questions. So because we want to give everybody a chance.
Okay, I'm going to be really brief. I just want to thank Kim and Andrew for the monumental task that you guys are taking on, and to let you know that racism being eliminated, that's far. So don't get frustrated there, because you can't change what's in people's heart. But what you do have is a platform that has existed before, and it's reemerged after George Floyd as an opportunity. Initially, when you guys started speaking, I wasn't sure if your task was to include racial and equity diversion in the workforce in the city and the county. Now what it sounds like you guys are charged to do is going out into the community and find out how you can deliver city and county services in a manner where racial disparity is not how they want to deliver their services. I'm not quite sure how that is, or do you get to write recommendations to the department heads on how they can deliver their services so that the communities that are left out are included? I'm not sure what your total task is. It sounds like you have a mixture of that. But I do want to encourage you to not get frustrated. When you see racism for what it is, understand what you're working with. Will it be eliminated? Racism has existed as long as man has existed. So your task is really to find out and to do is how you can understand the people that you're working with and work around that to create the policies and stuff that we need to minimize its impact and effect on the people that we're serving. Period. That's my story.
Thank you. Andrea?
Yes, I'm sorry. So my heart goes out to you, and I thank you so much, both Kim and Andrew. I can't imagine being in your situation. I can't imagine ever accepting it. So my heart goes out to you. I think, I don't recall who said it first, but yeah, you two really, and folks in your positions need a lot of support. You can't do it by yourselves. And I think where I wanted to emphasize that is that you two, as well as just Black people generally, trying to improve this situation, trying to bring justice to this nation and this planet. If you're Black, you need support, and unfortunately, the strongest support that we need is from white people and non-Black people generally. And so I say all this to ask a question, because I do know I'm supposed to ask a question.
Thank you.
Is Kim, to what extent do you have the power to intervene in personnel goings on within various departments, including the police department? Because that's the question. But what prompted the question is that I do know of an officer in the police department who, at this point, we have no permanent friends, no permanent enemies. At this point, I would consider having been demonstrated a strong allyship with Black people in southeastern San Diego. And she worked with the community policing division. I've worked with her. Many people here in Valencia Park have worked with her. And she effectuated some major change that was very helpful for all of us here. And as a result, she's been bullied on social media. She's been cursed at. She's been harassed by her superiors. If I were to believe it, I mean, I do believe her, but I haven't been inside of all the testimony. I believe her. She has a long track record, and she's been removed. She's been harassed to the point where she's been removed. And this is following a long tradition of, just like what happened in Kenosha, a long tradition of white people who are allies to justice for Black people being really damaged in one way or another, sometimes to the point of death. And so you, as a Black person in that position, what kind of ability do you have to intervene at all in the personnel goings on like the ones I described? That's it.
You guys want to answer it, or want to try to answer it, or? Whew.
I can answer. For me, we actually, so we have a couple of different structures in the county as far as we're talking about human resources specifically. We actually have another specific equity, diversity, and inclusion unit in HR that we created at the same time we created this office to do some internal diversity, equity, and inclusion work specifically around equity policies and practices in HR. But that's one thing. But what you're talking about is how do we influence on some of these decisions at even a more executive level, right? And it's interesting because one of the things we're hearing from staff, from employees, is that you can go through these processes, you go through HR, you can still, you can file these claims, but you still have these issues around bias. You still have these racist incidents that happen. You still have these people who are reacting to you because of your race, right? But at the same time, you can't necessarily prove that it was a racist incident, but they're treating me differently and creating a hostile working environment, all those type of things, right? So we're actively in the county, and we have a small team of folks, myself, the leader of the equity, diversity inclusion team and HR, Terrell Simmons, who some of y'all might know, and then our group HR director and financial government group is a sister, her name is Shantae Turner, who just got promoted into that role. And we're actively trying to figure out what is a process for us as a county to really investigate that, look at statistics, and then do something about it, right? And because that is a real thing. There's a lot of things that are happening in government or organizations, period, to where you can't necessarily prove that it's racism, right? Or it's blatant in your face, it's discrimination or retaliation, right? So how do you make sure that you account for that? So we're actively engaged in that, try to figure out that process, but it's something that's immediate that we need to work on, that we are working on.
Yeah, I'll echo what Andrew stated in that this is back to the organizing part of the work, is that having to prove something is racist doesn't feel good, right? And so to what your direct question was around what authority or what power do we have, I can tell you what I am looking into by way of getting into, in the city of San Diego, we have a personnel and an HR department, right? And so like I am getting into really getting clear around the ways in which both sides take and process any type of discrimination claims, A, B, or C. And so that's where I'm at. I think your response is that with these kind of positions, we have to understand the current practice that it sits in. And so that's, I think, sometime with revitalizing the way that this work moves, you got to understand and say, what is the current process that it sits in? And is that process not serving us? And is that process restricting us? Because there are some things that, to be honest with you, it restricts us. Once there has been a discrimination claim that's filed, is being litigated, there's things that I'm restricted from just legally. I can't do nothing about it. So what I am doing, in by way of just experience, is really understanding what type of processes or practices in our internal departments, such as the one that you just referenced, that really capture the experience, can be critiqued and then be looked at to give some ideation around what do we do that's more outcomes based. Because that's the hard part about these kind of positions. We're talking about municipal code, city council policies, HR practices, and in our kind of positions. And that's why your comment is useful and impactful for our positions, because then we can run in that direction. Because you give us those experiences that folks are feeling and thinking, and then we can serve as a way to get and say, well, what's particular policy? Where is it at? What has it been revised? Why have we not revised it? Because all these things still sit within the apparatus of a system that's been existing before us. These policies existed before we walked into these doors. Andrew said February. I was September, August, right? And so I do appreciate what you said, so I'm taking it all in. But I can't assure you, to your question, what my role is to make sure I'm working with both sides of HR and personnel to say, we need to make sure and talk about all your many policies and practices, especially the conversation around if and how our people of color are being treated, especially Black folks in our systems. So that most certainly is top of mind.
I appreciate that. And I just want to say this because it's really real. It's very, very quick. I really hesitated a really long time, contemplated asking you both that question. And that's why I really appreciate what you're doing, because I'm absolutely, I mean, if they'll do that to those 3 men in Kenosha, and they'll do that to this white female officer, I'm terrified because I know word gets back to them. So I'm terrified that this is going to get to them because they know who I am. And so I can't even imagine what it would be like in the position that you two are in. So I just want to thank you, and thank you for answering my question.
Any other questions? Kim, let me ask, I have a couple of questions. Let me ask you, what's your staffing? What does your office structure look like? What's your budget?
Yeah, great question. And the thing that I can say about the office budget is, so one thing is, it's to Andrew's point, this is part of the everybody's popping up a position across the country conversation, right? And so, and I'll give you an example. The city of Long Beach, they have a person like myself, and it's one person, right? So I think your question is perfectly positioned. So I am going to, number one, your first question, I have 2 positions appropriated to this office who will, that's why I was saying I gave a nod to the equity impact officer description, because right now I'm in the process of packaging what those 2 positions will look like. Now, my plan is to, and Ellen, your question is well positioned. When I was in Denver, it started out with just me. It was just one me saying, do racial justice work. When I left, I was able to appropriate in the several budget cycles, multiple people with a structure of about 10 to 12 people. So my plan is to slowly work with our budget office team, and the COVID has impacted city budgets in very ways that we just don't have the expenditures. But to your question, I have 2 FTEs that are appropriate to my office. What I also have is kind of to, even Andrew, I saw it on your slide, and purposely, I'm the kind of person, I'm not going to put nothing on a slide until I am showing you what I'm doing. So I don't have time to just be talking all the time about what I'm not doing. That's why I admire Andrew. Andrew is some leaps ahead of me. That's why I can give him a head nod. I have a community equity fund as well on my side of the house. And so I didn't put it up there, Ellen, purposely, because I am in the process of just learning more. I would not be authentic to who I am to go out to say I'm doing all these things without understanding the context of the way in which people have moved in this city prior to me being here. So I've been actually kind of cautious with going out saying I'm going to do all these 10 things without really being, to what Andrew stated, is engaging and listening with folks in a way that's safe in the COVID, right? Okay. So I do have an appropriation for an equity fund as well. I have a climate equity fund. I also have other funds that support this work. And so to your question, there's some funding leverage here that you will see in these offices around the country is not as strong as what we have. Mm-hmm. I'll just be honest with you. My plan is to keep growing it as the city's sales and lodging tax give us more discretion to do so with our budget. And so just giving you that start, though, there are some funds that I have, and that is 2 positions, community equity fund, and also climate justice fund, things like that. And also cannabis equity is also on my side as well, where I'm partnering with them also.
Thank you. And I say that because when this whole concept of your office was created, when it was presented to the community and a part of the political landscape when we were holding forums, what you described was in the budget. I would really advise you to move quickly and filling those positions, and also getting that office up and running. As you can see from some of the calls here, there is a great need, and a lot was promised to the community. I want you to know that a lot was promised, and a lot of it was going to fall on your office. So, put some speed to it, get those positions filled, and get the money out there in regards to pushing that office out as quickly as possible. My second question, if there are no other questions, and it's to both of you. This is BAPAC, and BAPAC was put together. We're about Black people, and also the African diaspora. We are the most underserved, under-resourced, and there's a history of disinvestment associated with our communities. I need you all to look at what your office is doing from that perspective, and if you can respond to the question now, if you want to look at it later. A part of the collective group that I worked with, these great leaders, we put together a 100-day plan for the mayor's office. If you need us to come back and put together another plan for your offices, we'd be happy to do that, because we need some commitments and we need them rapidly. Also, want to talk about, there's going to be millions of dollars hitting this county and city from the infrastructure bill, the Build Back Better, when it comes out, and we're going to be working with elected officials. But this is our time for Black people. And in your offices, I know you can't be all for everyone. But when you're looking through the equity lens, these folks are looking through equity lens when they're talking about implementing this money. We can ensure that this is our opportunity to build Black better. Black folks, uplifting the middle class, addressing some of the issues around that whole concept. So we don't want this to be a missed opportunity. We want this to be the opportunity. And your roles, you can help move that agenda on behalf of the Black community. Don't let it get lost in equality. Don't let it get lost in diversity. Don't let it get lost in people of color. This is about Black people who have been historically in San Diego. I'm a lifetime resident, who have been historically underserved. And I'm not talking about just Southeast San Diego. Black people are everywhere. That's why I'm so happy to know that Andrew is there for the county, because Black people live across the county in all sorts of areas, but we're all impacted by the delivery of services for the county and the delivery of services at the city level as well. So if you can just sum up within the context of my comments, your answer to the question, or how you could see us helping advance that particular agenda. Andrew?
Coming off mute, sorry. Yeah, okay. I think I appreciate it. What I really would hope to do is, so I know y'all put together that 100-year, I hope it's not 100-year, that 100-day plan. That 100-day plan, right? And I think so what came from that was a Black Youth Initiative was one of those initiatives. I want to sit down with y'all and not necessarily reinvent the wheel, but let's talk about what hasn't been accomplished, and let's talk about what could be replicated countywide, and just make it a part of work that the office is doing, and really use this team, right, and the team y'all put together for that to put that plan together, to put together a regional Black strategy, right? What does that look like for us as a region? And I'm happy to sit at the table with y'all and work with Kim and really do that work, and maybe work with folks in other cities to do that work too, because you're right, Black folks aren't just necessarily in one spot, right? And so how do we make sure that strategy touches everybody, but also knowing that Southeastern San Diego is just the most underserved community in our region, right? So how do we make sure we talk about District 4 in the city and making sure that that's but I'm happy to sit at the table with y'all and do that work quickly, right? I don't think it needs to take long, right? Because you already you already did that work. So let's just see how we fund it and support it.
I echo what Andrew stated, and that's what you get when you have both of us at this time in history who have similar theories of change in the way we're operationalizing the work. And so I'm with you, what Andrew stated. To your point, Andrew, us meeting collectively, then we can say, okay, what are things that the city's doing versus what's happening in the county, and how those things overlap. And so everything Andrew just said, I appreciate the comment, and I echo what he just stated. And we collaboratively talk about those things.
Thank you. And I think with Shirley Harai's new position and Amisha, is it Amisha from the port? We will definitely add you to that conversation because the Port of San Diego is well positioned to really impact the Black community. And Shirley has been a longtime BAPAC member. Rafael Castellanos, who I believe is chair of the Port of San Diego Commission, has been a longtime BAPAC member as well. And this is our opportunity because we know that, again, enormous resources are coming to these governmental agencies. Kim, budget deficits, I don't want to hear about it. We know the money's there. It's coming. It's on its way. President Biden said it's on its way. So it's not about budget deficits right now. It's about how do we use these resources in order to improve the conditions of lives of Black people in San Diego. That's what we're about. Any other comments? It's 1:58. Thank you all for being here. We got our action plan. And I want to say on this call, you have Kim and Andrew knows, you have some of the best and the brightest Black folks on this call, from mental health to medical, business to environmental justice. You name it. The Black intelligentsia is alive and well in San Diego, and we're here to support you to ensure that your office is successful. And Andrew knows we're here to support him because office is successful. You all are in some great positions right now here in San Diego to really make some things happen, but you can't do it by yourself. And we're here to support you. Reach out. Don't hesitate. In fact, if you don't reach out and we hear something that's gone bad, we're going to be mad because you didn't tell us. Y'all hear what I'm saying? There's no more checking the box, as Eddie said. It's about getting it done. This is the right time. And we're in the right time and we're in the right place and we got the right funding to make it happen for Black folks in San Diego. And we'll be a model and a leader for this whole nation if we can get it right. I want to thank everybody for being on this call. It's 2 o'clock and I want you all to have a great, wonderful weekend. And thank you so much. Take care and God bless.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Ellen.
Bye-bye.